satisfied, and said there was a supreme beauty that he had never succeeded in expressing in marble or bronze. "I have not yet gathered the radiance of the moon," he said. "I have not yet caught the glare of the sun. There is no soul in my marble, there is no life in my beautiful bronze." And when by moonlight he would slowly wander along the roads, crossing the black shadows of the cypress trees, his white tunic flashing in the moonlight, those he met used to laugh good-naturedly and say, "Is it moonlight you are gathering, Aurelius? Why did you not bring some baskets along?" And he too would laugh and point to his eyes and say, "Here are the baskets in which I gather the light of the moon and the radiance of the sun." And that was the truth. In his eyes shone moon and sun. But he could not transmit the radiance to marble. Therein lay the greatest tragedy of his life. He was a descendant of an ancient race of patricians, had a good wife and children, and, except in this one respect, lacked nothing. When the dark rumour about Lazarus reached him, he consulted his wife and friends and decided to make the long voyage to Judea in order that he might look upon the man miraculously raised from the dead. He felt lonely in those days and hoped on the way to renew his jaded energies. What they told him about Lazarus did not frighten him. He had meditated much upon death. He did not like it, nor did he like those who tried to harmonize it with life. On this side, beautiful life; on the other, mysterious death, he reasoned. And no better lot could befall a man than to live, to enjoy life and the beauty of living. And he already had conceived a desire to convince Lazarus of the truth of this view, and to return his soul to life, even as his body had been returned. This task did not appear impossible, for the reports about Lazarus, fearsome and strange as they were, did not tell the whole truth about him, but only carried a vague warning against something awful. Lazarus was getting up from a stone to follow in the path of the setting sun on the evening when the rich Roman, accompanied by an armed slave, approached him and in a ringing voice called to him, "Lazarus!" Lazarus saw a proud and beautiful face, made radiant by fame, and white garments and precious jewels shining in the sunlight. The ruddy rays of the sun lent to the head and face a likeness to dimly shining bronze. That was what Lazarus saw. He sank back to his seat obediently, and wearily lowered his eyes. "It is true you are not beautiful, my poor Lazarus," said the Roman quietly, playing with his gold chain. "You are even frightful, my poor friend, and death was not lazy the day that you so carelessly fell into its arms. But you are as fat as a barrel, and fat people are not bad, as the great Caesar said. I do not understand why people are so afraid of you. You will permit me to stay with you overnight? It is already late, and I have no abode." No one had ever asked Lazarus to be allowed to pass the night with him. "I have no bed," said he. "I am somewhat of a warrior, and can sleep sitting," replied the Roman. "We shall make a light." "I have no light." "Then we will converse in the darkness like two friends. I suppose you have some wine?" "I have no wine." The Roman laughed. "Now I understand why you are so gloomy, and why you do not like your second life. No wine? Well, we shall do without. You know there are words that go to one's head even as Falernian wine." With a motion of his head he dismissed the slave, and they were alone. Again the sculptor spoke, but it seemed as though the sinking sun had penetrated into his words. They faded, pale and empty, as if trembling on weak feet, as if slipping and falling, drunk with the wine of anguish and despair. And black chasms appeared between the two men, like remote hints of vast emptiness and vast darkness. "Now I am your guest, and you will not ill-treat me, Lazarus," said the Roman. "Hospitality is binding even upon those who have been 3 days dead. 3 days, I am told, you were in the grave. It must have been cold there. and it is from there that you have brought this bad habit of doing without light and wine. I like a light. It gets dark so quickly here. Your eyebrows and forehead have an interesting line, even as the ruins of castles covered with the ashes of an earthquake. But why in such strange, ugly clothes? I've seen the bridegrooms of your country. They wear clothes like that. Such ridiculous clothes, such awful garments. Are you a bridegroom?" Already the sun had disappeared. A gigantic black shadow was approaching fast from the west, as if prodigious bare feet were rustling over the sand, and the chill breezes stole up behind. "In the darkness you seem even bigger, Lazarus, as though you had grown stouter in these few minutes. Do you feed on darkness, perchance? And I would like a light, just a small light, just a small light. And I am cold. The nights here are so barbarously cold. If it were not so dark, I should say you were looking at me, Lazarus. Yes, it seems, you are looking. You are looking, you are looking at me. I feel it. Now you are smiling." The night had come, and a heavy blackness filled the air. "How good it will be when the sun rises again tomorrow! You know I am a great sculptor. So my friends call me. I create, yes, they say I create, but for that daylight is necessary. I give life to cold marble. I melt the ringing bronze in the fire, in a bright hot fire. Why did you touch me with your hand?" "Come," said Lazarus, "you are my guest." And they went into the house, and the shadows of the long evening fell on the earth. The slave at last grew tired waiting for his master, and when the sun stood high he came to the house, and he saw, directly under its burning rays, Lazarus and his master sitting close together. They looked straight up and were silent. The slave wept and cried aloud, "Master, what ails you, master?" The same day Aurelius left for Rome. The whole way he was thoughtful and silent, attentively examining everything, the people, the ship, and the sea, as though endeavouring to recall something. On the sea a great storm overtook them, and all the while Aurelius remained on deck and gazed eagerly at the approaching and falling waves. When he reached home, his family was shocked at the terrible change in his demeanour, but he calmed them with the words, "I have found it." In the dusty clothes which he had worn during the entire journey, and had not changed, he began his work, and the marble ringingly responded to the resounding blows of the hammer. Long and eagerly he worked, admitting no one. At last, one evening, he announced that the work was ready, and gave instructions that all his friends, and the severe critics and judges of art, be called together. Then he donned gorgeous garments shining with gold, glowing with the purple of the bison. "Here is what I have created," he said thoughtfully. His friends looked, and immediately the shadow of deep sorrow covered their faces. It was a thing monstrous, possessing none of the forms familiar to the eye, yet not devoid of a hint of some new unknown form. On a thin tortuous little branch, or rather an ugly likeness of one, lay crooked, strange, unsightly, shapeless heaps of something turned outside in, or something turned inside out, wild fragments which seemed to be feebly trying to get away from themselves. And accidentally, under one of the wild projections, they noticed a wonderfully sculptured butterfly with transparent wings, trembling as though with a weak longing to fly. "Why that wonderful butterfly, Aurelius?" timidly asked someone. "I do not know," answered the sculptor. The truth had to be told, and one of his friends, the one who loved Aurelius best, said, "This is ugly, my poor friend. It must be destroyed. Give me the hammer." And with 2 blows he destroyed the monstrous mass, leaving only the wonderfully sculptured butterfly. After that Aurelius created nothing. He looked with absolute indifference at marble and at bronze and at his own divine creations, in which dwelt immortal beauty. In the hope of breathing into him once again the old flame of inspiration, with the idea of awakening his dead soul, his friends led him to see the beautiful creations of others, but he remained indifferent, and no smile warmed his closed lips. and only after they spoke to him much